other people are too. I'm going to finish with this. Last week I talked about some scary doctors who think that you just do whatever you have to do, including limit services and the ability to participate in society in order to get people to get the vaccine, because after all, they know what's best for us. This is even more appalling. According to ethics professor Parker Crutchfield at Western Michigan University, psychoactive morality pills should be used in order to alter the behavior of those skeptical of lockdown regulations. He suggests that these drugs could be made compulsory or administered secretly via the water supply in order to gain cooperation. I'm not kidding. The article was published earlier this week in The Conversation, a news site focusing on content, quote, sourced from the academic and research community, end of quote, and supported by universities from around the world. Crutchfield says that when someone chooses not to follow public health guidelines around the coronavirus, they're defecting from the public good, and that such defectors require chemical moral enhancement substances to help them reason about what the right thing to do is. To me, it seems the problem of coronavirus defectors could be solved by moral enhancement, he writes. Like receiving a vaccine to beef up your immune system, people could take a substance to boost their cooperative, pro-social behavior. Could a psychoactive pill be the solution to the pandemic, he writes? It's a far-out proposal that's bound to be controversial, he concedes, you think? But nevertheless, is one Crutchfield believes is worth at least considering given the importance of social cooperation in the struggle to get COVID-19 under control. He says that one challenge in implementing such a system is that the defectors who need moral enhancement are also the least likely to sign up for it. As some have argued, he goes on to write, a solution would be to make moral enhancement compulsory or administer it secretly, perhaps via the water supply. These actions require weighing other values, he writes. The chemicals mentioned by Crutchfield, by the way, were oxytocin and psilocybin, the active component of magic mushrooms, which he says, quote, may cause a person to be more empathetic and altruistic, more giving and generous. He says that his research in bioethics focuses, I don't think this guy has any ethics, but focuses on questions like how to induce those who are non-cooperative to get on board with doing what's best for the public good. I can't even believe that this is actually something that an academic, still employed by the way, I checked, these people don't lose their job when they suggest that drugging people without their knowledge to get them to do what the government wants them to do is okay. Hard to believe that this guy's still employed, but anyway. So some Twitter users, I found this online, and some Twitter users that were appalled did some research, and they found other articles that this charming guy has written that I think you might find fascinating. He posted a 2019 paper called Compulsory Moral Bioenhancement Should Be Covert. And here's what the abstract of this paper says. Some theorists argue that moral bioenhancement ought to be compulsory. I take this argument one step further, arguing that if moral bioenhancement ought to be compulsory, then its administration ought to be covert rather than overt. This is to say that it is morally preferable for compulsory moral bioenhancement to be administered without the recipients knowing that they're receiving the enhancement. My argument for this is that if moral bioenhancement ought to be compulsory, then its administration is a matter of public health. And for this reason, it must be governed by public health ethics. I argue that the covert administration of a compulsory moral bioenhancement program better conforms to public health ethics than does an overt compulsory program. In particular, he says, a covert compulsory program promotes values such as liberty, utility, equality, and autonomy better than an overt program does. Thus, a covert compulsory moral bioenhancement program is morally preferable. So this isn't a new idea that started since COVID-19. This guy just seems to think that when public health authorities decide that you should do something, they should just do whatever they have to do to get you to do it, including drugging you. Another is titled, another one of his charming articles, It is better to be ignorant of moral enhancement. A reply to Zambrano. Apparently somebody challenged him on this. Thank God somebody out there is thinking. And he says, in a recent issue of Bioethics, I argued that compulsory moral bioenhancement should be administered covertly. Alexander Zambrano has criticized this argument on two fronts. First, contrary to my claims, Zambrano claims that the prevention of ultimate harm by covert moral bioenhancement fails to meet conditions for permissible, liberty-restricting public health interventions. Second, contrary to my claim, Zambrano claims that covert moral bioenhancement undermines autonomy to a greater degree than does overt moral bioenhancement. In this paper, I rebut both of these arguments, then finish by noting important avenues of research that this guy's arguments motivate. LifeSite News has written to Crutchfield to ask him whether he believes that the covert administration of psychoactive, morally enhancing chemicals is in keeping with the U.S. Constitution, and he has failed to respond to that. So even when challenged by a thinking human being who says maybe drugging people without their knowledge so that you can easily coerce them into doing things that you want them to do is not a good idea, his response isn't to have a debate about it. He just says people don't understand the importance of following directions from public health officials, and people wonder why I continue to compare this to what's gone on in other despotic regimes, like when Hitler was in charge of Germany and Europe, and Stalin in Russia, and Mao in China, and Fidel Castro. That's what these, in Venezuela, that's what these people do. We will get people to obey, regardless of what we have to do to get them to obey. And who they obey is the person or persons in charge, not elected officials, by the way. Nobody elected these health officials. And they're resigning in droves, by the way, and I do suspect that the reason is that some of them are concerned about keeping their medical licenses, and I think they should be, because I think one of the fallout, one of the consequences of all of this, once we start climbing out of the abyss that we've been in for a long time, is going to be that these people are going to be prosecuted. So I think some of the government officials will be prosecuted too. So anyway, such interesting people, doctors and researchers who think that we just should force Americans to do whatever we think they should do. And who appointed those 3 doctors last week in charge of our lives? Nobody elected them. Nobody elected this moron, and nobody elected these health directors that have been in control of our lives for so long. We really have to take back our country, folks. I mean, this is just horrific, and it's being taken seriously by some people, unfortunately. All right, well, that's it for today. As usual, pass this on to other people who you think would enjoy getting educated. Visit our website at wellnessforumhealth.com so you can see what the CDC has to say about mask wearing. I think that's really important to do, if you know what I mean. And also visit makeamericans.freeagain.com. Check out all the good things that we have going on there, including a good news section, because we need good news so that we can feel motivated all day long to continue the fight. All right, talk to you tomorrow. We'll be back to you on Thursday with more news.